Welcome to Rancho Buena Vista High School's first Respect the Ranch podcast for June 2009. I'm Scott Bailey. Designed to celebrate the culture of RBV through stories, interviews, music, and the arts, our podcast hopes to draw on the talents of the students and staff to create an entertaining and creative project for everyone to enjoy. Each Respect the Ranch podcast, much like the PRI show, This American Life, is built around a theme and then explores that theme in several ways. This month's theme, New Chapters, appropriate as the class of 2009 prepares for graduation, is designed to explore that ever-changing experience that we all have, no matter what our age. So, our podcast in 4 acts. In Act 1, from a second-story home office overlooking the hills of the Midwest, a former RBV teacher reflects on the power of change and how it has affected him. Act 2, seniors from RBV attempt to sum up the next chapter in their lives with a single, perfect word. In Act 3, a casual interview with an RBV administrator about Uzis and bowling movies. And finally, Act 4, by poet Richard Newman, a poem read by the father of a graduating RBV senior. All that and more on our very first Respect the Ranch podcast from Rancho Buena Vista High School. Let's get started. Act 1. Former RBV teacher Tim Chisholm has lived his fair share of life in his time. From working in Hollywood to traveling through Europe and meeting one of his favorite artists, Bob Dylan, to teaching in both middle and high school, he and his wife recently moved to the Midwest so he could pursue one of his lifelong dreams, writing novels. So, from his new home, Tim Chisholm submitted his reflections on new chapters and change for our very first podcast.
How do you begin a new chapter in your life? The simplest way, to extend the metaphor, is to turn the page. An almost effortless act, if you're reading, that is. If the story of your life were a book already written, then all you'd have to do is wet your finger on the tip of your tongue and, with perhaps a wistful sigh for the chapter just completed, turn the page and begin the next chapter. But starting a new chapter, when it comes to the struggle of living your life, is not so simple. It's not like the almost passive act of reading. It's more akin to the painful strain of writing. It's intimidating, because you start with a blank page, and then, there's all that spelling and punctuation. I've got a bit of experience in this area. I've already completed a few chapters in the story of my life. What I've noticed is that starting a new chapter, a truly new phase in life, requires unequivocal courage, an acute sense of purpose, and an enormous complement of cardboard boxes. With each new chapter in life, the size and number of boxes increase. And of course you need an ever larger vehicle for transport. Those of you graduating high school and quitting the campus at RBV, congratulations. You'll know what I mean soon enough, especially if you're leaving town to some distant college. Have you thought yet about what you plan to haul along? You've got your laptop, cell phone, maybe a few books. You should consider a garbage bag at least, stuffed with personal sundries. Don't underestimate the value of soap and toilet paper. And of course you'll need your stereo. An iPod, some sort of docking station, maybe a boombox CD player, and an armload of CDs. Now, you could fit all that stuff into a few lidless Beacons boxes. It wasn't always so simple. In 1975, my roommate's 2 JBL speakers were the approximate size of my parents' front hall closet. Add to that his receiver and equalizer, my turntable, and 3 wooden peach crates of record albums, and our stereo system alone came in at close to 1,000 pounds. Today you carry that same amount of music in a 3-ounce iPod. Take advantage of that. In the late 70s, I graduated from Southern Illinois University, and the next chapter of my life called me to go, as every young man should, west. For my journey to Los Angeles and the hopes of a life in the film biz, I managed to cram all my stuff, everything I owned, into the trunk of my 1974 Plymouth Duster, burnt orange with a black vinyl top. It was only a brief decade later when the next chapter of my life found me heading south to begin a new career as a teacher, only this time my stuff took up more space. I'd acquired a black leather lazy boy, a used TV, more record albums, and more than a couple pairs of shoes. Unfortunately, the car I was driving was a dirt brown Toyota Corolla with less storage space, so I needed the back seat as well as the trunk. And still, the car was spilling over like a Chicago hot dog with all the trimmings. Then, after teaching middle school in the high desert of San Bernardino County for 7 years, I heeded the need to slip farther south and confront another new chapter of my life, teaching high school. By this time, however, I'd procured more furniture, a few kitchen appliances, a newer TV, and a wife. Wives, of course, come with whole new categories of stuff. Together, we needed to rent a beefy truck to convey the boxes and 2 beefy college kids to help us load them all. Recently, I began the latest chapter of my life by moving back to the Midwest, not far from the shores of Illinois where it all began. This latest chapter has required far more preparation, much more work, and many, many more boxes. I actually believe we had boxes full of boxes. Too much stuff. We gave away plants, sold furniture, and threw out more stuff than I thought we owned. Still, it took weeks to pack it, and a Mayflower moving van the length of a presidential funeral parade to haul it all. As for unpacking all that stuff, I've learned to pace myself. 8 months into this new chapter, and I'm still trying to catch a glimpse of my wife through the stacks of boxes like cardboard stalagmites rising from the floor of our new living room. I think the way it works is this. Packing your stuff is a kind of inventory. You're forced to look carefully at your stuff, and it tells you who you are and what's important to you. So as you move into each new chapter of your life, it's helpful to pack your stuff. Fitting your stuff into boxes prepares you for the task of fitting yourself into a new setting. It makes it easier to adapt. And once you've remolded yourself, you begin remodeling your environment. You find your footing. You know your place. You're comfortable and complete again. Until, that is, the next new chapter. So remember, save the boxes.
Tim Chisholm, of course, is a writer and former RBV teacher who now spends his days with his wife and 2 dogs, tending to their 9-acre property and laughing a lot. And now, Act 2. As they prepare for their next chapters, RBV seniors spent some time telling us what they believe is the perfect word to describe their next year.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and a word to describe next year would be Chris.
Hi, my name is Jeff, and a word for next year would be embrace.
Hi, my name is Steven, and a word that would best describe my next year is crazy.
Hi, my name is Gil. A word to describe my next year would have to be rockin'.
Hi, my name is Megan, and the word to describe my next year is defining.
Hi, my name is Becca, and a word to describe my next year would be challenge.
My name is Jenny, and a word to describe my next year would be a test.
Hi, my name is Cherie, and a word to describe my next year is refreshing.
Hi, I'm Lizzie, and I'd like to describe my next year as intriguing.
Hi, my name is Matt, and the word to describe next year is amorphous.
Hello, my name is Eric, and the word to describe next year will be exciting.
Hi, my name is Vilma, and a word to describe next year would be chaotic.
I'm Yesenia, and I think a word to describe next year is delightful.
Hey, I'm Megan, and one word to describe next year will be whirlwind.
My name is Brian, and a word to describe my next year is artistic.
My name is JD, and a word to describe my next year would be exhaustion.
Hi, my name is Jessie, and a word to describe my next year is hardworking.
My name is Sydney, and a word to describe my next year is liberating.
Hi, my name is Becca, and a word to describe my next year is complexity.
Hi, my name is Talia, and a word to describe my next year is eventful.
Hello, my name is Caitlin, and a word to describe my next year is terrifying.
Hi, my name is Alex, and a word to describe my next year is confusion.
Hi, my name is Karina, and I'm here to describe my word for next year, and my word is scared.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and a word to describe my next year would be independence.
Hi, my name is Henry, and a word to describe my next year is better. Hopefully. Maybe.
Hi, my name is Daniel, and a word to describe my next year is a titan.
Hi, my name is Anna, and the word to describe me for the next year is emocionada. Hey, my name is Gerania. The word that describes next year is scary.
Hi, my name is Ilana, and a word that would describe me next year I think would be experience.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I think a word that would describe my next year would be independence.
Hi, my name is Christian, and the best word to describe next year is yeah!
Hi, my name is Amanda, and a word to describe my next year is exhaustion.
Hi, my name is Brad, and a word that describes the next year of my life is globetrot.
Hi, my name is Jess, and a word to describe my next year is craziness.
Hi, my name is John, and a word to describe next year will be clarity.
Hi, my name is Sydney, and the perfect word to describe next year is opportunity.
My name is Ken, and a word to describe my next year is immaculate.
My name is Hagen, and the word that describes next year is uncharted.
My name is Matt, and a word that I think will describe my next year is futon.
My name is Danielle, and my word to describe next year is exhilarating.
My name is Hector, and a word that describes next year would be exciting.
My name is Megan, and the word that best describes next year is consuming.
My name is Taylor, and the word that best describes next year is liberating.
My name is Kyle. A word to describe my next year is chaotic.
My name is Allie, and a word to describe my next year is bicycle.
Hi, my name is Elise, and a word to describe my next year would be stressful.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and a word to describe next year is exhilarating.
My name is Nicole, and a word to describe my next year would be involving.
Hi, my name is Adriana, and a word to describe my next year is intensity.
My name is Homer, and one word to describe next year is going to be chill.
Hi, my name is Diane, and a word that describes next year is crazy.
Hi, my name is Eduardo, and a word that describes my next year is increíble.
Hi, my name is Brenda, and a word to describe my next year is different.
Hi, my name is Mirza, and a word to describe my next year would be crazy.
My name is Oscar, and a word to describe my next year is happiness.
I'm Nick.
I'm Tyler.
And a word to describe our next year would be musical.
RBV seniors trying to sum up the next year, their next new chapter, with one word. And now Act 3. Principal of RBV, Varda Levy could well write her own book about the power of new chapters in life. Born and raised in Israel, she moved away from her home country after marrying an American she met on a summer trip to the U.S. She sat down with us for a casual conversation about the power of never giving up and what motivated her to move from the other side of the world to begin a new life. I'm here with Varda Levy, principal of Rancho Buena Vista High School. And Varda, how long have you been principal here?
This is the end of my third year as a principal.
As a principal, and you actually have had more experience at Rancho, right?
Oh yes, right. I was an assistant principal here for 5 years, and I also was a teacher here for many years. I was an English teacher. I was an English department chair. I was an IBAP coordinator. Actually, I started working here at 1989.
I see. So lots of experience at Rancho and lots of experience in public schools. But what some people don't know is that you've had almost other lives in a lot of ways. You've had lots of other chapters in your life that have been a big part of who you are now. And I think that maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So I've got a pretty finely tuned ear, and I've noticed you have an accent. I think it's Portuguese. Is that right?
No, it's not.
It's not. You're from Israel.
Yes, I'm from Israel.
Originally. And when did you first leave Israel to come to the United States?
I left Israel to come to the United States in 1967.
And how old were you then? I know this is an indelicate question.
This is a very delicate question.
How about this? Did you leave when you were a teenager, or were you in your 20s, or were you in your 30s?
I was in my very late teens, and at the very start of my 20s. Okay.
Roughly.
You're right.
Okay, so you left in your late teens, and I'm curious, had you been to the United States before
I visited, yeah.
You did. And
I was here on a summer break. When I was released from the Israeli army, when I finished my tour tour of duty in the Israeli army, in the Israeli Defense Forces, as they are called. I was given a trip to the United States by my parents, and during that summer vacation, I met a young man. We dated, and at the end of that summer, I returned home to go to Israel, and he and I continued to correspond. The following summer, he came to visit me in Israel.
You sent letters back and forth?
On a daily basis, and I have the record still.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you. This was before certainly internet, and phone calls to the United States back and forth from Israel was a very expensive deal, not like it is today. So if you wanted to connect with somebody, you wrote letters. And this was in the 20th century. This was not in the 17th century.
We're talking about it like you're chiseling it into stone or something.
Exactly.
So you wrote letters really on a daily, that's not hyperbole, that's not exaggeration.
On a daily basis.
Not just you, but also your husband's name is
Neil. And Neil wrote to me on a daily basis, and I have all the letters at home in a couple of shoe boxes. Every single day he wrote a letter.
So you met this American on the summer trip, and then you went back. How long had you been corresponding before you decided to make this move?
Well, actually, what happened was during the summer that he came to visit me, which actually was he came to Israel literally 6 days after the 6-day war. In the Middle East, and he wanted me to marry him then and go with him to the United States, return, and I could not quite make up my mind because it was a very tough decision for me. To this day, the decision to marry my husband and move to the United States has been the most difficult decision I ever had to make.
What is it that made it so difficult to leave? Because it was home?
Yes, because I knew that I would have to leave my country, my family, my language, the course of studies that I had begun. I was already in second year of law school in Israel at the time. So it meant a tremendous change in my life and a turnaround in my life plan that I never dreamt about. It was never my life plan to come and live in the United States. I didn't think about it. Even though I had a sister here, I had relatives here, I did not plan to do that. So that was quite a shift in the direction of my life, and that required a tremendous soul searching on my part.
And from the storytelling, it sounds like it happened pretty quickly. I mean, this is not something you imagined happening in your teens, and between meeting Neil and actually coming, it must have been pretty quick.
Well, actually, he wanted me to marry him the summer that he came to Israel. His entire family was there. He brought his parents there. They wanted to have a wedding. I said, wait, I'm not ready. Go home. And I sent him back home, actually. And after he left, I decided, well, maybe I will marry him because I missed him. So then he had to come back. We planned a wedding, and he was a college student then. We were very young. So during his winter break, he flew back to Israel, and we had a wedding, and then I flew to the United States.
And what year did you become right when you became married, is that the law about when you become an official American citizen? What was that process like?
What it was, I had what is called I became a legal resident. I had what they have, a green card. A green card is for people who immigrate to the United States legally. They receive a green card, which you have to renew every so many years. And actually, I became an American citizen only after my first daughter was born. I decided that since I had a child who was an American citizen, I needed to become one as well.
Okay. You dropped in there probably another chapter of your life that is fascinating to people. I know that there's stories, there's lore of you when you were assistant principal here about a picture that was on your desk. And if I'm not wrong, it's a picture of you in the Israeli defense. What was it?
Defense Forces. Yes, it's basic training.
It's basic training. This is a requirement for all Israelis, regardless of gender.
Right.
And so you've got a picture of you on your desk in your office when you're an assistant principal, and you're holding a weapon. Is that right?
Right.
Now, is that weapon an AK-47 or an M6? No, not an AK. That'd be crazy.
No. I'm holding an Uzi.
You're holding an Uzi.
Yes. Which was actually Uzi is a very light submachine gun that was actually designed and created by an Israeli.
But never as an AP. Would you at least let it be known? But so it was sitting there on your desk. It's sitting there on your desk, and kids would come in.
It's still here. It's in my office.
Oh,
yes.
It is. It's right up in the corner.
It's in my office right there on the side. Yeah,
fantastic.
Right.
Okay, so there you are standing with it. Did you notice with students sometimes while you're speaking with them, with their eyes maybe drift off to the side?
No, well, not certainly, but every once in a while I have a student who comes here and said, Mrs. Levy, is it true that you have a picture of you with a submachine gun in your office? And I said, sure, come in and watch it. And I'm still having dreams about, enlarging it and framing it and hanging it on my wall. I should do it one day.
I'm sure some visitors have done that.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
And two last things. Number one, I know that an experience as an immigrant coming to America informs probably your experience as a principal. I mean, there must be a direct line between your decision-making process as a principal and what it was like to be an immigrant in the United States. I'm wondering, is there any, can you maybe kind of describe a little bit about how your experiences moving to America inform your decision-making as a principal?
I'm not sure about decisions moving here informing me as much as the core of my being, in other words, being raised an Israeli, how much that informs my decision-making process. Because growing up in Israel and being raised as Israeli, you are taught from day one that you may not allow conditions around you or any set of circumstance around you to be a stumbling block that stops you if you need to do something that is really important. You learn that even though the odds very often are against you, you need to figure out a way to circumvent the odds and to do in spite of the odds. And I really think that has affected me in a very profound way and is part of who I am, because I don't easily take a no for an answer unless I am absolutely convinced that what is attempted to be done, it cannot be done. And I always tend to try to figure out ways to do things in spite of the difficulty. Actually, there is an idiom in Hebrew that has been written by the man who is considered to be the visionary of the Zionist movement, which basically it's a movement that envisioned a modern-day state of Israel. And he wrote a book, a very, very short book about this vision of his. And in that text, one of the things that he says, and in Hebrew it rhymes, in English it doesn't rhyme, but in Hebrew it rhymes, it says, if you will it, W-I-L-L, if you will it, it will not be a legend. In other words, if you believe in something strong enough, and if you are really intent on having something happen, even though it seems like a legend, like an absolute dream at this point, you can make things happen. It really is a belief in the power of the individual to make a difference. And it's ingrained in the way I've been brought up. I have selected to do quite a number of things that many people said, you're crazy, this cannot be done, such as the fact that I came to the United States and within a month I was a student of English on a UC campus trying to get a BA degree in English, and my husband then, who's an American, told me then, you're not going to be successful. In fact, he told me, change your major, the competition will kill you. Which probably wasn't the right thing to say to you. Exactly. And at the time I remember thinking, well, we are married, but he doesn't know me very well yet. So the point being that I, even in my life here, as I came to the United States and became an English major, and then an English teacher, and who is teaching, I taught in a community college, I used to teach at Panama College English, and then an English teacher here, the notion that me with my accent, that I come to this place and do what I do, is a statement in and of itself that the circumstance of one's life just cannot stop you from being or from doing what it is that you think you want to do.
Could you say that idiom in Hebrew?
Yes,
Hebrew?
yes. In Hebrew, you say, Im tirtzu, ein zo haggadah.
Beautiful. I have one more thing.
Okay.
I know that you're a big fan of the movie The Big Lebowski by the Coen brothers.
That's right.
What I have here is a scene from it. Now, I have to let you know that it's very difficult to find any scene in The Big Lebowski where there's an enormous amount of swearing. But this is one that I found. The setup here is that the two main characters, Walter and the dude, have gone to a teenage boy's house because they are convinced that the boy knows where some money that's been stolen has been taken. And I thought we could play a couple of roles here.
Okay.
So would you like to be Walter or the dude? Don't pre-read it. What is your instinct?
I think I would be Walter.
You're going to be Walter. Okay. So you're going to read Walter's lines and I will read the dude.
Is this your homework, Larry? Is this your homework, Larry?
Look, man.
Dude, please. Is this your homework, Larry?
Just ask him about the car.
Is this yours? Is this yours, Larry? Is this your homework, Larry?
Is that your car out front?
Is this your homework, Larry?
We know it's his homework. Where's the money, you little brat?
Look, Larry. Have you ever heard of Vietnam?
Walter.
We're entering a world of pain, son. We know that this is your homework. We know that you stole the car.
And the money.
And the money. And we know that this is your homework.
Varda Levy, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Varda Levy, RBV principal and, who knows, possibly an actor in the next chapter of her life. And finally, Act 4. International languages teacher Jim Livingston is no stranger to new chapters in life. A longtime teacher of German at both RBV and Vista high schools, he has been a part of some serious changes in public schools. Nothing, however, compares to the change that is about to happen in his family as his fourth and last child, Annika, graduates from RBV. In honor of this next chapter in his family's life, he reads Richard Newman's poem, Mowing.
Mowing by Richard Newman. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. A classic Zen poem from the Zenrin Kushu. I'm no Buddhist, but I know enough of lawns to say the grass grows by itself, even when I'm not sitting quietly. Take now, for example. I'm in a terrible mood, full of so much desire and April cruelty. I could wash away the Four Noble Truths, and, almost as I mow, the new growth pushes against my chloroplastid shoes. Even as a child visiting Virginia, I gazed down picnic-perfect battlefields and guessed that before the last cannonballs burst and the last dying soldiers cried their mothers' names into the air, the grass was already swarming back up the bloody hills. As it now goes about its green business with entrepreneurial zeal, cracking sidewalks and disheveling my brick patio. And when my daughter swings in her backyard, crying, "Watch me, Daddy! Look, how high!" I look up from the mower as she launches into the leafy arms of the trees. The whole swing set heaving, then swoops back down again, her bare feet riffling over the blades, grass I scattered with my own two fists. And I know, sitting, standing, quiet or not, that as she grows, there's nothing I can do.
And that does it for our very first Respect the Ranch podcast. Thanks again to Tim Chisholm, RBV seniors, Varda Levy, and Jim Livingston for participating. Our original music was created by RBV teacher Nick Wheat and seniors Nick Shoup, Tyler Estabrook, and Brian Swoboda. If you'd like to send us feedback, make suggestions for future Respect the Ranch podcast themes, or contribute in any way, email us at rtrpodcast@gmail.com. That's rtrpodcast, one word, @gmail.com. So until next September, I'm Scott Bailey, thanking you for being a part of our very first Respect the Ranch podcast from Rancho Buena Vista High School.